If you've ever struggled with tightness, inconsistency, or accidental slice on your second serves, keep watching because you're about to learn the perfect kick serve contact point. And once you master this, your consistency is gonna skyrocket, your serves are gonna start to feel effortless, and your kick serves are gonna start kicking. Now this video is gonna be broken down into 3 parts, starting with the racket and ball position, then moving on to the body position, and finally, the hitting arm / wrist position. Let's get into the video. Mastering the ball and racket position is gonna be the first step toward getting that heavy kick because it's gonna set the foundation for all the other techniques that we cover. If you watched our video on the perfect serve contact point, then you know that on your flat or slice serves, you're gonna be hitting the ball roughly over your hitting shoulder with your hitting arm near full extension and your wrist going into that ulnar deviation so that your racket is tilted about 0 to 20 degrees to your left. Contrast this to your kick serve where you're gonna wanna make contact more to the left. Ideally, you're hitting the ball over or slightly to the left of your head for your second serves. And you'll also wanna hit the ball in a lower position with your wrist more neutral and your racket tilted about 40 to 55 degrees to the left. Now this horizontal racket position is critical because it's what allows this wrist ulnar deviation motion to then release the racket upward for topspin. And if you find that you're getting accidental slice on your serves, then 9 times out of 10, you're either making contact too high or too far to your right. Now to make contact in the lower position, you have 2 options. Option A, some players like Federer will lower their toss on the second serve, which will help them retain a faster rhythm and prevent hitches in the serve. And option B, other players like Zverev will keep their toss relatively at the same height and instead wait for the ball to drop for longer, which can theoretically help add a little bit of extra spin. But to make timing that clean contact as easy as possible, I typically recommend simply lowering the toss. Because let's face it, when your serve is the most consistent, that's when you have the most confidence to swing out faster, and that racketed speed is what leads ultimately to the heaviest kick possible. And finally, how far into the court you make contact is also critical because it's going to determine how close your racket face is at contact, as well as how much power versus spin you can get. Now typically, the closer you toss to the baseline, the less horizontal component you'll have in your swing path, and this will make learning how to swing up on the ball easier. It'll also lead to a more vertical racket face at contact, which will then increase the trajectory of your second serves and help with consistency. So while you learn all of these kick serve techniques, I recommend tossing closer to the baseline. And then as you master the fundamentals and you start swinging faster, you might notice that your kick serves start to go long. And at that point, you can start tossing further and further into the court so that you dip the ball down for that heavy kick mixed with that power. Now to make contact lower and further to your left comfortably, it's critical that you adjust your body position. And to understand why, try this little exercise with me. You're gonna start off by finding a handy fence or a wall. Number 1, you're gonna start by standing straight up against the fence and raise your hitting hand as high as you can. Now in this position, your racket is technically in that proper position. You can make contact lower and further to your left, but your shoulder probably feels very tight. So number 2, I want you to simply lower your arm until your shoulder feels loose and comfortable. And instead of using that shoulder, you're going to tilt your trunk over to the left until your hitting hand is in that same position. So now you're able to make contact above your head while keeping your shoulder loose. But now what you might feel is that your trunk or your lower back is in a stretched position. And that's also a problem. So then we move on to step number 3. You're gonna simply turn your body sideways and notice how now you can make contact over your head without feeling that tightness in your shoulder or feeling stretched in your trunk. And finally, take a step away from the wall and you're going to lean forward, boom, and you should be able to feel like you're able to press into that fence. So you're feeling loose in the shoulder, you're feeling relaxed in your back, and you're feeling stable. So with this new body position, it should feel like you're able to make contact lower and over your head without feeling tightness in your shoulder, without feeling that stretch in your lower back, and while feeling very powerful, like you can really push into the court. And once you get comfortable with that position, you can move on by grabbing a racket and try to toss and catch the ball right over your head while keeping that comfortable feeling. Now with this new body position, you might notice a few things. First, your body is more sideways, which orients your body upward and makes achieving that upward throwing motion more comfortable. Secondly, you're leaning forward, which is critical to making contact further into the court and getting power. Now, an interesting note is that on the first serve, because your body is rotated into the net more, this forward lean is going to be done more through this forward hip flexion. And in contrast, on the second serve, because your body is more sideways, this forward leaning motion is done more through the side bending or lateral trunk flexion, like so. While the hips themselves remain more neutral or extended, helping orient your body upward, which, as we'll cover next, then allows you to swing upward more comfortably. Now, the exact degree to which your body is closed or leaning forward into the court will vary depending on what you're comfortable with or what style of serve you're trying to hit. So if you're looking for a more consistent, repeatable motion that doesn't take a lot of effort, you might want to model more of Nadal's serve, staying more upright through the entire motion. While if you're looking to really maximize your kick and you have the athleticism for it, you might exaggerate these elements like Rafter does. And of course, the best way to find your ideal body position is to go on the court and experiment for yourself and find what gets you the best results while allowing you to feel comfortable and pain-free. And last, but certainly not least, we've got the position of the hitting arm. As Dede mentioned in our previous video on how to hit the perfect kick serve in 3 steps, with your body more closed, your hitting arm is naturally going to be oriented more upward. And to recap, you can feel this for yourself through this exercise. Start by turning your chest to the net. Or if you're watching this from home, then you can imagine that this screen here is the net. Now from here, get into the double L position with a 90-degree angle at your armpit area as well as your elbow. And from here, imagine that there's an arrow pointing forward straight from your shoulder or your frontal deltoid area. Now grab your racket and notice that internal shoulder rotation is going to take your racket straight forward. If I were to toss the ball up and use this motion with my chest pointed toward the net, it would naturally lead to a slice serve. Now, keeping your hitting arm in that same position, this time, I want you to turn your chest sideways from the net or from the screen. And keeping your hitting arm relaxed, do that same internal shoulder rotation motion, and notice that now your racket is going to be driving upward. Now, if I combine this motion with a lower toss over my head, that's when I can really start to get that heavy kick. Now, an interesting note is that at contact, it may feel like your shoulder is more externally rotated on your kick serves. And this has to do with how the body rotation affects the orientation of your racket. Specifically, the more you rotate your body into the net, the more internal shoulder rotation will be required to point the racket strings forward. So if I turn my body away from you or the net, then my racket strings are naturally pointed toward the side. And the way that I point it forward is through this external shoulder rotation. Hopefully that made sense. It should also feel like your forearm is more supinated at contact. It should feel more like a slice serve directed upward as opposed to your flat serve. Because while a forearm does release into pronation on elite second serves, too much active pronation will end up rotating the racket forward through contact and flatten your second serves out too much. So a critical skill to hitting your second serves is learning how to use this internal shoulder rotation motion independently from the forearm pronation. And a helpful cue for this is to really focus on throwing the edge of your racket up through contact. Now, if you look at most pro serves, you'll also notice that their hitting elbow is going to be comfortably extended at contact. But just like with the forearm pronation, a very common mistake that we see players make is over-relying on that elbow extension as a source of racket head speed. And players that learn to hit their kick with this elbow extension, as opposed to learning to utilize a good throwing motion, will typically find that their kick serve feels tight and that their racket head speed is capped. So we found that a helpful drill is to learn how to hit your kick serves with your arm slightly bent through the entire motion, really exaggerating a low contact point. And this is going to force you to use internal shoulder rotation to generate your upward racket head speed as opposed to that elbow extension. And then as you get comfortable with this throwing motion, you can progressively raise your contact point until you get that nice elbow extension and you're still feeling that nice throwing motion from your shoulder. And finally, as we covered earlier, your wrist should be more neutral at contact and release into ulnar deviation through contact. And timing this is what creates that last second whip-like release and crazy acceleration through contact. It's one of the most important techniques you can learn, but it's also one of the most difficult to master. So on that note, if you want us to make a full video covering the role of the wrist on the kick serve, then let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying our kick serve series so far, then you're going to love our brand new flagship course, The Confident Kick Serve. This is the ultimate 7-week program designed to help you double your second serve consistency and help you develop monster kick all in an effortless and pain-free manner. So go check out this kick serve mega course by clicking the first link in the description below. And as always, athletes, until next time, go out and train hard. I'll see you in the next video.